often hear people refer to Jack Daniel's as a bourbon, but it's not. It's a Tennessee whiskey, and it says so right here on the bottle. Not that being called bourbon is bad. Bourbon whiskey is made according to a very high standard of quality, a standard that Jack Daniel's meets and then does it one better. Let me explain. By law, a bourbon must be made in America. Jack Daniel's certainly qualifies here, being crafted at America's oldest registered distillery. A bourbon's grain bill must be at least 51% corn. Jack meets that as well, using a fine grade of yellow corn in its mash. Now to the fine points. A bourbon must be distilled at no more than 160 proof or 80% alcohol by volume. Jack is well under that. It comes over the still at 140 proof or 70% alcohol. This lower alcohol content means more flavor and character from the mash will come over the still. It's not all distilled away. Bourbon must enter the barrel at no more than 125 proof or 62.5% alcohol by volume, and Jack does just that. Bourbon must also be bottled at no less than 80 proof or 40% alcohol by volume. Jack Daniel's Old No. 7 and Gentleman Jack are both 80 proof or 40% alcohol, while Jack Daniel's Single Barrel is more robust in character and flavor and is bottled at a higher proof. Unlike some other whiskeys, bourbon contains no artificial coloring or flavoring. The same is true of Jack. Nothing artificial. We draw all of our color and most of our flavor from the barrel. So important is the barrel to making good whiskey, we insist on making our own. We're the only major distiller to go to the extremes to make a quality barrel and with it a superior quality whiskey. Speaking of barrels, that brings us to our final point. Bourbon must be matured in new charred oak barrels. Jack, too, only uses its barrels one time because it's with the first fill that a barrel imparts its most intense flavor and character. So there it is. Jack meets or exceeds bourbon standards on every point. So why isn't it a bourbon? Because it does one thing more, and it's that extra step that makes Jack Daniel's different. The Jack Daniel's difference is mellowing. We go the extra mile by mellowing our whiskey drop by drop through 10 feet of hard sugar maple charcoal. Making the charcoal and letting the whiskey seep slowly through it is a time-consuming and costly extra step. We call it the extra blessing. It filters out impurities and off-notes, gentles the character, and imparts a distinctive flavor that the world knows as Jack Daniel's. Mellowing makes Jack a Tennessee whiskey. Our slow mellowing process goes all the way back to 1866 and our founder, Mr. Jack Daniel of Lynchburg. Mr. Jack challenged us that every day we make our whiskey, we'll make it the best we can. And making the best whiskey means mellowing it drop by drop. One sip and we think you'll agree. Jack Daniel's and Scotch. They're as different as, well, Tennessee and Scotland. And the two of us don't even agree on the spelling of whiskey. The difference starts with ingredients. We use two different grain bills to make our whiskeys. In Scotland, the grain traditionally associated with Scotch is malted barley. For Jack Daniel's, made here in Tennessee, its primary grain is a fine grade of yellow corn. The Scots barley is malted with peat fires that give Scotch its distinctive smoky taste. Jack's distinctive character comes from mellowing its whiskey drop by drop through 10 feet of hard sugar maple. Mellowing makes Jack Daniel's different, makes it a smooth and gentle Tennessee whiskey. In some respects, Jack's quality craftsmanship is more like a fine single malt than a blended Scotch. A single malt is a whiskey crafted by a single distillery, while blended Scotch brings together whiskeys from various distilleries. Jack Daniel's, like a fine single malt, is the whiskey of one distillery, the Jack Daniel Distillery. Its flavor and its character are its own. But let's talk for a minute about where most of the discussion centers around Jack Daniel's and Scotch. Let's talk about age, or what we like to call maturity. Scotch distilleries and a good number of their drinkers take great pride in many of their whiskeys being 12 years old and sometimes older, while Jack Daniel's whiskey is matured to taste rather than a calendar, so we offer no age statement. Why, you might ask? Because age is relative. Like people, whiskey's maturity isn't all about age. It's about experience. It's not how many years a whiskey rests inside a barrel, it's what happens inside the barrel that determines the whiskey's maturity. A whiskey's maturity, its color and character, are more affected by the barrel used and the climate of the country it matures in than how long it ages. Let me show you. Let's compare Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey with a fine, popular 12-year-old single malt Scotch. Jack Daniel's is richer in color, it's picked up more of the barrel's character. Why? There are two primary reasons Jack is more mature when it comes to barrel character. One, Jack Daniel's is only matured in newly charred white oak barrels. We only use a barrel one time, while most Scotch ages in used barrels, and those barrels are refilled again and again. A barrel, like a tea bag, imparts its most intense flavor and color with the first use. And so it takes far more time to draw color and character from the wood after it's been used. Jack uses its barrels once, draws from it the richest flavor, and then sells its used barrels to Scotch companies who reuse them. We like to think that that's perhaps why some folks like Scotch. It's that little bit of Jack left over in their barrel wood. Then there's the climate. Lynchburg, Tennessee varies greatly in temperature, from more than a sweltering 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius to well below freezing, while the climate in Scotland tends to be much more moderate. The more intense temperature swings in Tennessee means the whiskey will have more interaction with the wood inside the barrel. Whiskey expands and is drawn into the wood during the summer heat and contracts and is pushed from the wood in the cold of winter. The result is the barrel imparts more flavor with each passing of seasons in Tennessee than it does in Scotland. From grain bill to mellowing to maturing, Jack is different than Scotch. There's just no comparison. Age doesn't tell the story, only a taste will. So we invite you to taste for yourself. One sip and we think you'll agree, mellowing is what makes Jack what it is. Something completely different, a whiskey unlike any other.